Early 1900s boxing was absolutely brutal and almost closer to street fighting than modern day boxing. They would spend more time clenching and grappling each other than they would spend punching each other. They would trip each other, and the moment one of them came back up, they would immediately go right back to punching each other. And this era was filled with some of the greatest boxers in history: Johnson, Sam McVey, Joe Jeanette, and Joe Gons. However, out of all of them, who I believe to have been the best was Sam Langford. Here, Jim Flynn tries to punch Sam Langford. So Langford pulls Jim in while stepping back. This causes Jim to have to change footwork to stop himself from falling. But this change of footwork actually nullifies Jim's punch's power. This sort of genius infighting was what made Sam Langford such a good fighter. The more common way Langford stopped Jim was by wrapping his arms under Jim's biceps while pushing forward. Sam would then enter a battle of slipping. First, Sam would slip his arms under his opponent's. Then, he would push his opponent's arms back. Then, he would land a super strong punch. This was only possible due to his reaction time being far faster than his opponent and his arms being in a much better position than his opponent. Here, Sam is in a position where he is about to take a punch, so he goes under his opponent and does a cartwheel, identical to many African and Afro-Brazilian martial arts. Although in America, most of these African-American martial arts are extinct, Sam Langford and other African-American boxers of that era are rare glimpses into what they looked like. The ironicity of this is that it's likely boxing which made all these African-American martial arts extinct. Sam's ability to dodge was also amazing. It was identical to Angola capoeiristas like Cobra Mansa. Here, Sam uses Jim's momentum to land a knockout punch. Jim then tries to fall and rest on top of Sam's body, so Sam jumps away. Boxers back then were far more disciplined than today. Sam had an amazing ability to slip jabs. The way to counter Sam's grappling style is to move forward as to apply maximum pressure against his arms. Boxers back then had far better knowledge behind positioning and faking. Here, Joe Jeanette is about to be cornered against the ring, so he launches himself against Sam Langford as to not be pinned in the corner of the ring. This jumping and jabbing maneuver was very common from Jeanette. I call this the jumping jab. Sam was great at deflecting these jumping jabs. Sam grabs a hold of Jeanette's arm and starts hooking him. Today, this would lead to a penalty due to grabbing and hitting at the same time. Joe Jeanette, realizing he's too tired to stand up, decides to take down Sam with him. Baiting Sam to come in, he then sweeps Sam to the floor with a technique extremely similar to capoeira's esquiva. Sam Langford then counters the sweep by grabbing onto the ropes. Gene would occasionally bend down to dodge Sam's punches, very similar to how the peekaboo style dodges. Gene, after being hit multiple times, decides to, instead of use his strength, use the ropes to guide his movement. This may very well be the first recorded use of the rope-a-dope technique. African American boxers of these times used every part of their body to punch, not just the arms but the legs too. Here, Sam jabs from the left side, then the right to keep his opponent guessing. Then, he uses his momentum from punching to dodge to the side. Most boxers nowadays parry from the outside of the opponent's punch, but Sam and many boxers of that time would parry punches from the inside using their strength. He constantly goes from one side of the opponent to the other to make it harder for them to dodge and hit him. Sam was no stranger to fakes, using multiple of them to pin his opponent to the corner of the ring. Sam would often push his opponents away. Today, pushing opponents can often lead to a penalty. Pushing opponents can help mess up their timings, gain you better positioning, and tire them out. He seems to treat training more like a game than something serious. This spirit is far rarer in modern day boxers, but it can be found in some boxers like Prince Nassim. One of the only people who beat Sam Langford was Jack Johson. However, at the time, Jack Johson was 35 pounds heavier than Sam Langford. Joe Gons was the main inspiration for the modern day jab. Jack Johson also had his own jab, but for some reason modern day boxers forgot about it, probably because his jab was too hard to replicate. Jack Johson would do a left and right jab simultaneously, making it hard for his opponent to approach him. I call this jab the double jab. With this double jab, he would land a volley of jabs. Most boxers nowadays who jab do it with no purpose. However, Johson did twice as many jabs and was still able to understand what was going on. Jack Johson, when clenching, would put his opponent's arm down while pulling his arm back to land a punch. Even if his opponent got a body shot off, it wouldn't be as powerful as Johnson's punch to the face. Right after he landed this hard hit to the face, he went right back to clenching. Here, he launches a volley of jabs to create an opening for an uppercut. However, now that Jeffries has let his guard down, he keeps punching while using his right arm to hold Jeffries up.
Jeffries goes down for the first time in his entire professional career.
He then punches Jeffries each time he tries to get up, ending the fight.
clenching left foot, which sends him out of the ring. Jeff's chief second, with the help of a fan, lifts him to his feet. Johson rushes Jeffries across the ring, where he floors Jeff with a paralyzing right to the head. Rickard steps between the two fighters as Sam Berger, in dark vest and hat, rushes in and stops the fight to save Jeffries from further punishment.
Jack Johnson hated his arms being lower than his opponents when clenching. This is the complete opposite from Sam Langford, who was fine with his arms being on the bottom. Parrying from the inside is more risky, but also more rewarding. Here, Johnson leans back to neutralize his opponent's punches. Back then, boxers sacrificed their balance for power. Johnson's clenching often neutralized opponents by squeezing their arms in. Here, Johnson turns to the side and hooks Stanley to get him off. Johnson could bounce, similarly to Muhammad Ali, however he rarely did this. Johnson seemed to have the most difficulty with long-range hooks, which is probably why he only won by points and not knockout to Joe Jeanette. Here, Johnson gets sweeped, but he catches himself by widening his stance and landing on his hands and heels. Another great boxer of this time period was McVey, who is noted by Sam Langford as having an arm which was weirdly shaped, making his jabs into hooks. His shoulder seems to maybe be higher, but at the very least more forward than the average person. And his bicep seems to be rotated more outward than the average person. This curves his forearm in, resulting in a hook-like jab. This is the exact same technique Sonny Liston used, although McVey, due to his naturally shaped arm, was much better at it. If you want to learn how Muhammad Ali boxed, I fully explain everything on how he boxed in this video on screen in 10 minutes. It's super entertaining, it's super informative, trust me, it's a great video. Thanks for watching.